Amravati to Udaipur to Ajmer, the Sar Tan Se Juda threats are only increasing, and there are many disturbing questions that emerge from these developments. A man of religion, a Khadim at Dargah Ajmer Sharif, announces a bounty for a woman to be beheaded. Is this a drunken rant, or does this show the level of radicalization? In the Amravati case, who do you trust if a friend of 16 years plots your murder over a social media post? Just how deep is the radicalization of some Indian Muslims when they pay extra to get a number plate 2611 to celebrate the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, perhaps one of the worst terror attacks on our country? The biggest cause for concern. We keep blaming Pakistan for radical Islamists, but just how many snakes do we have in our backyard? Joining me on India First, Dr. Tasleem Ahmad Rahmani, President of the Muslim Political Council of India. Saira Shah Halim is a respected activist and writer. Lieutenant General Satish Dua is former Kashmir Corps commander. Dr. Vikram Singh is former DGP of Uttar Pradesh. And all my guests have grappled with this situation, and I want to begin by asking you, Dr. Rahmani, Sar Tan Se Juda from Amravati to Udaipur, and now even a Khadim at Khwaja Garib Nawaz, a Sufi shrine. Sir, just how radicalized are these elements?
I think the radicalization word is too small for that. It's an animal behavior. It cannot even... I'm astonished to even hard-headed. That's why I demand it. That it's not just 295A. It's not just 153. I want the more stringent, the stringent of the stringent provisions of our law to deal with such people. Judicial beheading is not our law, but I want the judicial hanging in the execution of such people. Not that just this Dargah person, this Sharabi kind of a man, but all those, even that 16-year-old friend. This Sar Tan Se Juda is not a concept of humanity. It's not a concept of Islam as well. There are three sources of Islam: Quran, Hadith, and the practices of Prophet ﷺ. None of these three things has shown this Sar Tan Se Juda kind of thing. It is not Islam. It's not religion. It's not humanity.
We've had a series of Sar Tan Se Juda. You know, that's the disturbing aspect. We've had a series of processions and rants in different parts of our country. General Dua, a Sufi shrine, a Khadim at the Dargah. His words no different than what Islamic State terrorists who behead their victims would say and do, sir. Are you concerned about the level of radicalization?
Sure, Gaurav. I think any person in his right senses would be concerned, in fact, much more than just concerned at the state of affairs. What one has seen in my experience has been more in Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir, is that the social media platform is platforms are a very potent tool, and it is being exploited to the hilt by Pakistan. Initially, they used to actually export the ideologies in Kashmir. For instance, we're just talking about Kashmir now. In Jammu and Kashmir, they would export the ideologies and radicalize the youth. But today, especially in the last couple of 2 to 3 years, we are seeing a shift. Instead of their organizations, their infrastructure, molding opinions over here, they have actually recruited, whether they are organizations or individuals or groups, that spread this rabbit idea. You said in your opening introduction, now we have such elements within our country. These elements are being propped up. Surely you do find disgruntled people, and they are the ones who are being recruited, and then they are the ones who then radicalize youth further to carry out such heinous acts.
Okay. Saira Shah Halim, are we in our country downplaying the threat of these radical Islamists? We repeatedly say what Hillary Clinton told Pakistan about snakes in Pakistan's backyard. But ma'am, from Amravati to Udaipur to Ajmer, perhaps we in India need to worry about snakes in our backyard.
See, it is very clear, Gaurav, that radicalization of any sort will not be tolerated by the people of India, whether it's a Muhammad Riaz, Ghaus Muhammad, or whether it's a Shambhu Lal Regar who lynched a poor man and put his video up, on social media and was bragging about the lynching incident. So radicalization, or rather terrorism will not be tolerated on this soil. And I think all political parties of different hues should condemn, even if the radicalized elements come from their political party or from their community, because this gives a very different misappropriation of the religion or the political party. For example, if a spokesperson of a political party gives a radicalized comment that backfires or that has serious ramifications, the political party in question needs to take cognizance and ownership that, okay, or distance itself from the speaker. On the other hand, if somebody from the community says that they're representing, like you're talking about this Ajmer Dargah person, it is absolutely condemnable and abhorrible if he has made any such statement or if he's housing any such radical. It is completely, a strict action needs to be taken against such individuals. Again, I'm telling you, few misled individuals do not represent a faith or do not represent a political party.
Are these a few misled elements? And that's the point I'm coming to, Dr. Vikram Singh. It's not just about the beheadings. It's about the processions that have been carried out in our country with hundreds chanting Sar Tan Se Juda. These elements who were ranting Sar Tan Se Juda, whether it was happening in Kashmir or happening in Bareilly or happening in other parts of the country, some of them could actually end up being a potential Riaz or Ghaus Muhammad and actually end up beheading someone.
You are very right, Gaurav ji. What Hillary Clinton said, snakes in the backyard, I would say snakes in the grass. And indeed, it is a matter of concern that if after Friday prayers there is horrific brick batting, then there are processions and huge processions demanding somebody's blood, it is a cause of concern. I would appeal, and it is a matter of tremendous satisfaction that all the esteemed panelists today are incensed and indignant over what has happened in the last few days. And indeed, it is a cause of concern. But yes, the law enforcement agencies have a task at hand, starting from the Mutawalli of Ajmer Sharif, where I have been for ziyarat, where I have been a pilgrim myself, a place of peace and worship, and to say that it is a blasphemy of the worst kind. And indeed, whatever be the community, let us not talk of Congress and the BJP, let us not talk of Hindus and Muslims, let us talk who has transgressed the rule of law, and whoever he or she may be, with whatever community or faith, that person needs to be not nipped in the bud, but just crushed in the bud. All the might of the law must come.
Crushed in the bud is what you say. I absolutely appreciate that point. And it's because of the points that you're raising, we did not bring in political elements into the debate today. We did not want to make it political party A versus B versus C. This is a national security issue. This is far more serious, and that is why we've got the finest voices, the most authoritative voices here on India First. And that is why, Dr. Rahmani, today a spade needs to be called a spade. Whether it's a Yusuf or an Irfan, educated Muslims. Dr. Yusuf was a friend of Umesh Kolhe for 16 years. We are told Umesh Kolhe helped Yusuf financially, not just with his sister's wedding, but also with daughter's admission. And yet, Umesh Kolhe was murdered over a social media post. Sir, we are unable to grapple with this level of radicalization of these elements. Educated Muslims, clearly education couldn't be an issue.
See, Rahul, on 10th June 2022, when the processions across the country were taken out and this slogan Sar Tan Se Juda has started, since that day onwards, at least I am speaking on social media very loudly that this Sar Tan Se Juda cannot work in our country. And I raised a demand that day that it is not just that we take the CCTV footage and arrest some people. It's a very small and easy thing. No. We did a very, very deep investigation that who penetrated on those processions. And what are their links? Even on 28th June, I said not just the people who committed it, but the people behind them who radicalized and make them ready to commit such heinous crimes. And Mr. Doha has very clearly and openly said it is the people who are coming from outside the country which don't want to see us as a stable country.
Okay.
They want to disturb our unity and our stability and our that's the biggest reason. We know, and there are some geopolitical reasons as well. I said it that there are the big powers who don't want to see us to flourish in this era of Russia.
No, then
and
Indian
Ukraine
Muslims
war.
need to
All
stand
these
up against
together
them.
are
Indians
impacting
as
us,
one
our
people,
youth.
India needs to stand up against such elements.
Yes,
General Dua,
of course.
General Dua, you've dealt with it,
India
not
has
just
to
in
stand
Jammu and
united,
Kashmir,
not
but
Muslim, not Hindu.
when you were heading
everybody
the
of
tri-services. Okay, okay, sir, your point taken. But General Dua, Yusuf and Irfan are educated men. It clearly is not lack of education that prompts this Sar Tan Se Juda mentality. This is far deeper.
I like to make a distinction between educated and literate. They are all literate people that you're speaking about. Education is a very comprehensive thing, and I think that is what is lacking. In today's world, we need to be more discerning, because today, who is actually spreading hate? I mean, today hashtags go a long way. Today, if some event is trending, you put a hashtag, and thereafter put out a blatant lie as a video clip or as news, that catches fire, and that actually then grabs the attention of misguided minds. So the point being made here is that we will have the country, we need to run our own narrative. Instead, what is sadly happening, though you haven't brought political personalities on the debate here, but sadly, the narrative is thereafter controlled or shaped by the political voices, which some of us actually play into the hands of the other side by because of politics. So the point that I'm trying to make, I think this requires not all of government approach. This requires whole of nation approach to grapple with this menace, because this is a scourge that will take our country down, and we are seeing it day after day, whether it is a religious issue now or there are some other issues, but every time the way of protest, the way we deal with issues, the anger spilling on the streets and then resulting in such heinous crimes is increasing.
General Dua, you make a very serious point. The point you're making is some political parties in India are playing into our enemies' hands. Is that what you're saying? That they may want to score political brownie points, they end up benefiting the enemies of our country?
I think we see that all the time, whether it is political parties or groups. It's, when you start questioning the basics, sometimes it is on to do with your leanings, and you are questioning the basics, which is for example, today, if some event is taken place, and instead of condemning that heinous crime outrightly, we start questioning the authorities, the establishment on various points, I think then we are playing into the wrong hands.
Okay. Then Dr. Vikram Singh, you've been Director General of Police, and you've held and you've dealt with whether it's counter-terrorism or counter-radicalization, politics being played in such situations. The country needs to wake up. Are we playing into the adversary's hands? And how do you stem the tide, sir? How do you arrest the rot?
Absolutely, you mentioned it, and I would go that the wake-up call came about 10 years ago. But we chose to call Dr. Zakir Naik Aman ke Paigambar, Aman ke Farishte, and we ensured that Dr. Zakir Naik delivers lectures at no other than the National Police Academy, Hyderabad, and National Academy of Administration. We woke up rather late to ban the Simi and the Indian Mujahideen. We woke up rather late to proclaim Dr. Zakir Naik as a proclaimed offender and an absconder at that. Yes, we are playing into the hands of the enemy by backing up the fifth columnists and also those who have questionable antecedents. I would leave it at that, but at the same time, Gauravji, the time has come to say zero tolerance to those who have anti-national predilections and anti-national leanings. Whoever they may be, I will not take names just now, but everybody knows who these elements are. Either you are with India or you are not with India. And India comes first always and every time. And those who have different priorities, well, they had better fend for themselves, because a resolute nation is going to be after you, and much, much earlier before you can think and before you can even say Jack Robinson.
Saira Shah Halim, India is at crossroads. Either this evil is nipped in the bud, or God forbid, this fire will engulf the nation. Now, will the educated liberal Indians speak up loud and clear and isolate such elements and those who give them that intellectual cover fire, so-called intellectual cover fire?
Okay. So firstly, this Udaipur incident has been condemned univocally by everybody, especially I've seen, whether I've gone on social media, whether I've gone on Facebook, everywhere, especially from the minority community, everybody has condemned it univocally.
But Sairaji, it's not just Udaipur, it's Amravati, it's this Khadim, and those hundreds who are attending Sar Tan Se Juda rallies.
Okay, so now what happens is, when there are people who are part of a sleeper cell of a political party and who have been being seen with certain political people in the past. Okay, so right now people do not know whether these people have been loaded or they've been there for political effect or what they are up to. For example, there was this case of DSP Davinder Singh. He was seen ferrying his Hizbul terrorists, ferrying to and fro. And why was he in service? And all these years, nobody knows.
If that is wrong, that justifies Sar Tan Se Juda.
No, I said
beginning. And isn't it time India rises above whataboutery? What about that? What about that? What about that?
In the beginning,
Two wrongs don't make a right, ma'am.
I said I'm against any radicalization on any side of the fence, whether it's a Shambulal Regar, whether it's a Mohammad Riaz who threatens to behead or beheads. Any kind of lynching, terrorism, any violent protest or whatever happens in the country has to be.
But what about those anti-CA protests that became violent? You know, the riots that happened, Dr. Vikram Singh, I have last 30 seconds. This whataboutery actually needs to stop, sir.
Whataboutery has not done any good to us, and it has no logical consistency either. It doesn't prove a point at all. The fact of the matter is, if anything is condemnable, it is condemnable, and no amount of comparison or no amount of rationalization will do any good to us. Let us face the facts together, that if anything is blatantly wrong, illegal and immoral, it has to be condemned with all the might at our command. Otherwise, we will be missing the bus.
The level of radicalization, Sairaji, with people having a motorcycle with 2611 number, 2611 Mumbai terror attacks, the worst terror attack on a country.
So that has to be taken very sternly, very seriously, because nobody can go around committing acts of terror in whoever's
and the entire ecosystem. The entire ecosystem, and somewhere down the line, the nation needs to come together and say, you know, it can't be like that film, Jao pehle uska signature lekar aao aur uska signature lekar aao.
And I want to add one sentence, Rahul. Justice.
Go on. Okay, Dr. Rahmani, I have last 20 seconds. Go on, sir.
Prevail apolitically.
Absolutely.
I just want to make a request to the Government of India and all other agencies that the justice must prevail equally and apolitically, and our agencies must be free of the political pressure.
So
I will let that be the last word on the show. I've run out of time on this part of the show, but we'll be tracking the story very, very closely. General Dua, Dr. Vikram Singh, Tasleem Ahmad Rahmani and Saira Shah Halim for joining me here. Many thanks.